Let me be real with you about something nobody wants to hear. Your pain isn't special. It's not unique. It's not some mysterious wound that requires years of healing. It's predictable, preventable, and entirely your responsibility. That's the most brutal truth about pain. And Machiavelli figured it out 500 years ago while watching people suffer over and over from the same patterns. Here's what he saw. The people who kept suffering weren't suffering from unique traumas. They were suffering from predictable consequences of predictable choices. And they kept making those choices because they refused to accept that their pain was their responsibility. Not their fault. Their responsibility. And the moment Machiavelli accepted this brutal truth about his own pain, it ended. Not gradually, immediately. Because once you understand that your pain is predictable and preventable, you can't keep creating it without knowing exactly what you're doing. In the next 12 minutes, I'm going to show you this brutal truth and why it's the most liberating thing you'll ever accept. Florence, 1513. Machiavelli's in exile, and he's doing something most people never do when they're in pain. He's taking full responsibility for it. Not blame. Responsibility. He's asking, what did I do that made this pain inevitable? What choices did I make that guaranteed this outcome? And here's what he realizes. Every single moment of his pain can be traced back to one of 3 predictable mistakes he made. He trusted people whose interests conflicted with loyalty to him. Predictable consequence, betrayal. He expected people to care about his well-being when caring conflicted with their advancement. Predictable consequence, disappointment. He made himself dependent on others' choices for his emotional state. Predictable consequence, suffering when they chose differently. And he sees it. His pain wasn't random. It wasn't bad luck. It wasn't other people being uniquely cruel. It was the predictable result of predictable mistakes. And that's the brutal truth. The truth nobody wants to accept because it removes the comfort of victimhood. Your pain is predictable. If you keep making the same choices, you'll keep experiencing the same pain. And you know this. Deep down, you know this. You know that if you keep trusting people who've shown they're untrustworthy, you'll keep getting hurt by their untrustworthiness. You know that if you keep making your happiness dependent on how others treat you, you'll keep suffering when they don't treat you well. You know that if you keep expecting people to prioritize you over their own interests, you'll keep being disappointed when they don't. You know this, but you keep doing it anyway. And here's why. Because accepting that your pain is predictable means accepting that it's preventable. And accepting that it's preventable means accepting that it's your responsibility to prevent it. Not their responsibility to stop hurting you. Your responsibility to stop creating conditions where hurt is inevitable. That's brutal. That's the truth most self-help won't tell you. Because it's easier to sell you healing from wounds than to tell you to stop creating the wounds in the first place. Let me give you a concrete example from my own life, because I resisted this truth hard before I accepted it. I had someone in my life who was chronically unreliable, would make plans, cancel last minute, would commit to things, not follow through, over and over. And every time I was hurt, disappointed, frustrated, and I'd think, why do they keep doing this to me? But here's what I wasn't asking. Why do I keep expecting different behavior from someone who's shown me exactly who they are? The brutal truth. My pain wasn't coming from their unreliability. It was coming from my refusal to accept their pattern and my continued expectation that they'd violate it. They were being exactly who they'd always been. Consistent. Predictable. I just kept expecting them to be different. And that expectation? That was my choice, which made the resulting pain my responsibility. The moment I accepted that, the moment I stopped expecting reliability from someone whose pattern was unreliability, the pain stopped. Not because they changed, because I'd stopped creating the conditions for pain. That's the brutal truth Machiavelli discovered. Your pain isn't happening to you. You're creating it through predictable mistakes that you keep making despite knowing better. Now here's where this gets even more brutal. You keep making these mistakes, not because you don't know better, but because the mistakes serve you in some way. Trusting untrustworthy people lets you avoid the responsibility of protecting yourself. If they hurt you, it's their fault. You are the victim. You don't have to change. Making your happiness dependent on others gives you someone to blame when you're unhappy. It's their behavior that's making you miserable. Not your choice to give them that power. Expecting people to prioritize you lets you avoid accepting that you're not special to most people, that you're just another person in their life who they'll deprioritize when it serves their interests. The mistakes feel like they're protecting you, but they're not. They're just giving you an excuse to keep suffering while feeling like it's not your fault. And Machiavelli's brutal truth cuts through that excuse. It is your fault. Not because you're bad, but because you keep making choices that create predictable pain, and you know exactly what you're doing. Machiavelli wrote, "Men are so simple and so ready to obey present necessities that he who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived." But what he really meant was, people choose to be deceived, because being deceived lets them avoid responsibility. "I was tricked" is easier than "I ignored obvious red flags because I wanted to believe differently." Your pain is predictable, it's preventable, and it's your responsibility. That's the brutal truth. And I know what you're thinking. But what about when people genuinely wrong me? What about when I do everything right and still get hurt? Here's the even more brutal answer. There is no doing everything right. There's only making choices that either create conditions for pain or prevent them. And most of your pain comes from continuing to create those conditions while pretending you don't know what you're doing. That's the truth Machiavelli revealed. Now let me show you how it actually operates in real life. So how does this brutal truth actually play out? Let me show you in two contexts where people most resist taking responsibility for their pain. In relationships, this is where the resistance is strongest, because we've been taught that love means trusting, being vulnerable, expecting care. But here's how the brutal truth operates. You meet someone. Early on, they show you who they are. Maybe they're a flaky texter. Maybe they talk about their ex a lot. Maybe they're hot and cold with attention. Red flags. Small ones, but clear. And you ignore them. Because you like them. Because you want it to work. Because you think maybe you're special enough that they'll be different with you. So you keep investing, getting more attached, building expectations. And then, months later, they hurt you in exactly the way those early red flags predicted. They're unreliable, or they're not over their ex, or they pull away when you need consistency, and you're devastated. How could they do this? I gave them everything. I was there for them. But here's the brutal truth. You saw this coming. Those early red flags told you exactly what would happen. and you chose to ignore them. Your pain isn't from them being who they are. It's from you refusing to accept who they showed you they were, and then being shocked when they behaved exactly according to pattern. That's predictable pain. That's preventable pain. That's your responsibility. Not because you deserve to be hurt, but because you saw it coming and chose to create conditions where it could hurt you anyway. Real talk. I did this. Met someone who was clearly emotionally unavailable. They told me they weren't ready for anything serious. They showed me through their actions that they were still hung up on someone else. And I thought, but they're so great when we're together. Maybe I just need to be patient. Maybe they'll realize what we have. 6 months later, they ended things. Said they weren't ready. Exactly what they'd told me at the start. And I was hurt. But the brutal truth? I had no right to be surprised. They told me. They showed me. I just refused to accept it because I wanted different. That pain was my responsibility, because I created it by ignoring obvious reality. In professional settings, the second context is work, and this is where people really struggle with responsibility for pain. You're working with someone, a boss, a colleague, whoever, and they show you who they are professionally. Maybe they take credit for others' work. Maybe they throw people under the bus when things go wrong. Maybe they make promises they don't keep. You see this. You watch them do it to other people. But you think, that won't happen to me. I'm different. I'm valuable. They respect me. And then it does happen to you. They take credit for your work. Or they blame you for something that wasn't your fault. Or they break a promise they made, and you're hurt, betrayed, shocked. But here's the brutal truth. You watched them do this to others. You knew their pattern, and you convinced yourself you'd be the exception. Your pain isn't from them being who they are. It's from you refusing to accept their pattern and believing you'd somehow be exempt from it. That's predictable. That's preventable. That's your responsibility. I learned this one the hard way too. Had a boss who would commit to supporting projects and then abandon them when politically convenient. Watched it happen multiple times to colleagues. And when I pitched a project, I thought, but mine is actually good. They'll stick with this one. They didn't. First sign of pushback from higher-ups, they abandoned it, left me exposed, and I was angry. But the brutal truth, I saw the pattern. I just thought I'd be special. And that was my mistake, not theirs. That's how this operates. You see patterns, you ignore them because you want different. Pattern plays out exactly as predicted, and you suffer because you refused to accept reality. Your pain is the consequence of refusing to accept what you already know. So what happens when you accept this brutal truth? When you genuinely take responsibility for your predictable, preventable pain? 3 things change immediately. First, you stop repeating the same patterns, because you can't keep doing something while fully accepting that you know exactly what consequence it creates. You can ignore red flags when you pretend you don't know what they mean. But once you accept, I'm seeing a pattern that predicts pain, and I'm choosing to proceed anyway. You can't do it unconsciously anymore. You're making a choice, eyes open. And most people, when forced to make that choice consciously, choose differently. Second, you stop expecting others to prevent your pain, because you accept that preventing pain is your job, not theirs. They're just being who they are, consistently, predictably. You're the one deciding whether to create conditions where their behavior hurts you. And when you accept that, You stop feeling betrayed when people behave exactly as they've always behaved. You just observe, adjust, and continue. Third, you become genuinely hard to hurt. Not because people stop doing harmful things, but because you stop creating conditions where those things can hurt you. You see patterns early. You accept what they predict, and you either adjust your expectations or remove yourself from the dynamic. Either way, you're not suffering over predictable consequences of choices you made while knowing better. Machiavelli lived this way after accepting the brutal truth. People still betrayed him. Politics remained brutal. But he documented that he stopped suffering over it, because he stopped expecting people to violate their nature for him. He stopped ignoring patterns because he wanted different. He stopped creating conditions for predictable pain, and then acting surprised when pain resulted. That's what changes. You stop creating your own suffering, not because you become perfect, but because you can't do it unconsciously anymore. Here's the most brutal truth about pain. It's predictable, preventable, and your responsibility. Not your fault. Your responsibility. So here's what you do with this. Think about your current pain, whatever's hurting you right now, and ask yourself this brutal question. Did I see this coming? Be honest. Was there a pattern you ignored? A red flag you dismissed? A predictable consequence you refused to accept? Almost always, yes. You saw it. You just didn't want to believe it would happen to you. And here's the shift. Stop ignoring what you see. Stop expecting exceptions to patterns. Stop creating conditions for predictable pain, and then acting shocked when pain results. See patterns, accept what they predict, and either adjust your expectations or remove yourself from dynamics that create inevitable pain. That's taking responsibility, not blame, responsibility. And when you do that, when you genuinely accept that your pain is predictable and preventable, it stops. Not because people change, but because you stop creating the conditions that make their behavior painful. That's the brutal truth Machiavelli revealed. That's how you stop suffering. Accept responsibility. Stop creating predictable pain. And watch what happens.